Thank you for joining. My name is Ray Miller. I'm Assistant Director here in the Housing Department. Oversee several programs, one of which is the Multifamily Department. We have a packed agenda for you today. This is the pre-proposal conference for the multifamily program allocating disaster 2017 Hurricane Harvey funds for affordable multifamily developments. So we have a long agenda today. Usually the format, we like to keep things, for the most part, pretty informal. We would ask that you save many of your questions towards the end. We'll have, I believe, about 45 minutes for a Q&A session. If we run out of time, we will then ask you to submit all questions in writing over to our procurement department. We'll go into a little more detail, but we want to make sure we have enough time for a Q&A session because there's often a lot of questions that arise. So before I begin, you know me, Ray Miller. I'm going to quickly introduce several people from the Housing Department. First of all, we have Ryan Bibbs, Assistant. He is a division manager here in the multifamily group. We have our Deputy Assistant Director, Ana Martinez, who'll be speaking with you later today. Is there anybody else from the multifamily team here that I can't see from the back here? If you want to raise your hand, and just in case, it's always good to put a face with the name. Nobody, they haven't joined yet. Okay. Oh, Mike Forenza over here. You'll be hearing from him a little bit later, talking about our accessibility standards. Oh, Dominica and Dan. So two of our renowned multifamily underwriters here in the department are joined us as well. And then we are also be joined with several members of our compliance team to talk to you about Section 3 and Davis-Bacon requirements. We have Tawana Roan from our procurement group. We have Ryan Slattery and Melissa Aho from our recovery office, Mayor's Recovery Office, talking about some new design standards we're going to be incorporating within the SNOFA. Just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to put a face with the name of people you're going to be talking to today. All right. We might have to do this manually. Oh, is it on? Technical difficulties. There we go. Thank you. I'll figure this out. There we go. All right. So let's start off. So we're going to start off with our disaster 2017 priorities. What are we trying to accomplish with this money? We're going to touch on the loan terms and some other nuances about this particular NOFA. There are some new items this year. If you had a chance to go through the document, some things we are incorporating within this round 2 that we did not have in round 1. Tawana will talk to you about the whole procurement procedure and some of the deadlines you need to be mindful of as we're going through this process. Development standards, some of these new items that we're incorporating for this year. Selection criteria, always a very hot topic of how we end up picking the deals that they get our money. And then we have an opportunity for compliance to come talk about the federal strings that come by taking these funds. So as we move on, I will then introduce Ana Martinez. I'm sorry, Ryan. Ryan's taking on the section. Ryan, take it away.
Thank you, Ray. Good morning. Ryan Bibbs, Division Manager, Multifamily Division. Okay. All right, let's just get started here. Priorities. Multifamily priorities, we will be exclusively looking for rehabs, reconstructions, new construction, preservation of affordable housing, permanent supportive housing, and areas such as TERS, complete communities. We're also prioritizing low poverty concentration and high performing school areas and transit-oriented development sites and areas of high rental costs. Thresholds that we'll be looking for. Within the city of Houston boundaries, of course, must be in good standings with the city, no taxes owed. Experienced developers with capacity, maximum of $25 million per award, and Awards will be no greater than 50% of total sources, and no greater than 25% poverty unless you're in a CRA. Eligible activities, I mentioned that earlier, but we'll just discuss again. New construction, rehabs, acquisition, demolition, refinance. On the rehabs, I want to point out we are considering rehabs eligible activities, but what we've been doing recently is we're really taking a closer look at the rehabs. We want to make sure that we are putting in preservation for at least 20 to 40 years. So, not just, paint and floors, but we may even want to do a tour with the developer and see exactly what's going to be changed, what's going to be rehabbed, so we can really get that affordability in place for 20 to 40 years. Loan terms, we are, our land use restriction agreement will be senior to all other liens, and we'll be looking for 1%, well, the loan terms will have a 1% interest annually, subject to cash flow. And minimum of 20 years loan term on LOR. We have done deals that have 40-year affordability also. And the repayment obligation, if there's a sale or refinance on these deals within affordability, the city would be looking for some of the proceeds to come back to their department. Rent restrictions. So on the DR-17 funds, the rent restrictions will be required, will be 51% of total units. You'll need to have 10% of the units will need to be 30% AMI, 20% will need to be 50% AMI, 40% will need to be 60% AMI, 30 at 80. And here we just have an example of how that could play out on a example project. Thank you. Next we'll have Anna Martinez on what's new in our NOFA.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So I want to talk a little bit about what is new this time around in the NOFA. And I know some of these requirements kind of trickled into the last one. I don't believe they were discussed in the last NOFA meeting. Okay, workforce protection measures. So as you know, the department is always looking for ways to improve our processes. Workforce protection allows us to make sure that the workers are, first of all, safe, and also getting compensated fairly on projects that we finance. So one of the first things that we're going to ask in your application is that you include a statement on what you'll be doing for safety. Also, all individuals performing work on the site must have received OSHA 10 certification. At least one supervisor on site will have to have OSHA 30 certification and must be present at all times. The minimum hourly wage should be the higher of either $15 an hour or the federal prevailing wage rate. Workman's compensation. So that'll have to be provided either on a project level or umbrella policy by either the owner or the contractor. Apprenticeship training is also going to be critical here. A minimum of 10% of all labor hours must be performed by individuals enrolled in apprenticeship or craft training programs. The programs do have to be certified by the U.S. Department of Labor. Section 3 requirements, and our compliance team will be here speaking a little more in depth on these, but Section 3 will be required 30% of the aggregate number of new hires each year, as well as 10% of all project hours will have to be performed by Section 3 residents. Employment classifications. With employee job classifications, they have to be verified and they will be reported on your certified payrolls. Section 3 workers and apprentice level workers are going to have to be directly employed by the project. Minimum property standards. Where did it go? I guess it's over here. Did that come up? Okay. So minimum unit size requirements. On efficiencies, the minimum there will be 500 square feet. On a 1 bedroom, 600 square feet. 2 bedroom, 800 square feet. 3 bedroom, 1,000 square feet. 4 bedroom, 1,200 square feet. Property amenities, we're expecting that you'll have a furnished clubhouse or community room on-site leasing office and management, a children's playground for family developments, camera security system, 24-hour protection on all of these developments. Elevators will be required for family properties that are 4 stories and above, and for senior properties, 2 stories and above. Unit amenities. So all of the units will need to have ceiling fans in each bedroom, microwaves, washer-dryer connections, phone and internet service. Debarment. So debarment isn't something that's new, but it has changed in terms of our internal process. Typically, we do a quick and dirty review throughout the system to make sure that you guys haven't been flagged in there. The process moving forward will be that you'll be expected to enroll through the System for Award Management System and provide a DUNS number in your application. The website there is where you'd go to initiate that, www.sam.gov. Neither the applicant business or any principal owner, which is anybody that owns 20% or more of the business, may be debarred. And I think Ray is going to take over for equitable dispersion.
The hot topic of the day. So many of you who applied for a 9% tax credit round have seen some of the results of this new policy. And the intent of this policy is that within the city of Houston, we have a 650 square mile area that we want to make sure that we have opportunities to put affordable housing, not just in areas, say, that are going through revitalization or high opportunity, but the entire city that requires affordable housing. So this has been a policy where we looked very extensively at the council districts. You can see here, we did an analysis of where is the affordable housing within the city by council district. Some council districts are overrepresented with the supply of affordable housing. Some council districts are underrepresented. Not to say, you see that big red line there in the median, and it's not the intent of the policy to make all council districts meet that median number. However, it is an opportunity for us to be able to be concerted in the way that we are evaluating the transactions going forward. And it started with our 9% tax credit application process. And roughly we had about 50 some odd applications to receive resolutions of support. We ended up supporting, announced 25. A lot of it was driven by this policy here. We're going to be coming out with some clarifications, realizing that everyone has opinions about why their deal should have got one or not. There is an appeal policy. We will be sending out a notification later today. If you are requesting an appeal of your transaction, there will be an opportunity to do that. Time is short, and so there will be a deadline by next week to submit one of those. But we do want to make clear that we did make recommendations for 9% awards recently. It is not the intention that that is the be-all and end-all. Most of those transactions will be coming back to us again through this round to fund. And if you received a resolution of support for us, it is not a guarantee that you will receive the funds from us. It is a different evaluation process and a different review process. I will say that it is a favorable decision that you did receive a resolution of support, but we are not discouraging anybody. If you did not get a resolution, do not apply. That is not the intent of the policy. But it is a way for us to be able to make sure that every council district, every areas of the city get an opportunity to have affordable housing in their area. So I know there will probably be a lot of questions on this as we go on a little later, but I did want to have that opportunity to talk about it. So there are several council districts that we have identified, A, B, D, H, and K, where we are basically limiting ourselves to a maximum of 2 transactions within those council districts, and they must be located in or about a recognized CRA, which is either a complete community plan a complete community that has a plan in place. There have been some recently new announced complete communities that the plans are still in the works. But we are recognizing complete communities that have an active plan that we'll be able to evaluate the transactions with. Or there's an active TERS within the area as well. So if you're in planning to apply in one of those 5 council districts, it needs to be located in or approximate within a CRA. And then there are the council districts with underrepresented amount of affordable housing, C, E, F, G, I, J, do not have to be located within a CRA, and that we are having a maximum of three transactions within those council districts. These limitations do not apply to rehabilitations because primarily the affordable households are already there, so we're not concentrating further. So it does not apply to rehabilitations, nor does it apply to supportive housing transactions that often have a geographic reason they have to be located there. So those are the two exceptions to this policy. So when we are evaluating these, there are several factors that we review for the 9% round, including availability of financing and likelihood that you would actually get the tax credits, poverty concentration within the area, school ratings, access to public transportation, a lot of the same characteristics that will apply in our financing as well. So these are just the things that we evaluate internally when we make these determinations for this policy. So that's just a very quick overview of what's driving this and why we're driving it. We have a housing committee meeting on Monday in council chambers at 10 a.m. where we'll be talking about this with city council as well. So Tawana Roan is our procurement person, and she's going to talk to you about this whole application process.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to ask two questions. How many developers do we have in the room? All right. How many MWBEs do we have in the room? Okay, awesome. So the MWBEs, look, raise the hands up again for the developers. MWBEs, this is where you can make your connection. This is a place where you can learn who you need to connect with to fulfill some of the desires we have here. So first of all, we have an estimated timeline here. The applications, they are due on March 13th. The threshold review completed and amendment due dates is April 10th. And these could be like estimated, as we say, okay? And your award announcement will be made on May the 1st. And the underwriting is 120 days. Housing committee tells you when they meet on third Tuesdays of each month. And the document preparation and city council approval 4 weeks after housing subcommittee, because a lot of y'all call and ask what's going on. So this is just an estimated timeline. You don't have to call me and say, okay, when is this due or whatever. Remember, this is all estimated. Did I skip one, Ray? This is the point I need to be. All communications. I know y'all love Ray. I love him too. And I know y'all have a good communication system with him. But after today, no direct contact with the program area. I know you love Ray team. They are a great team. But I am your contact person after today. So questions must be submitted by February the 14th. Final responses will be issued by February 21st. The application due date, Friday, March 13th at 3 p.m. Not after 3 p.m., you guys. But let me just say something. On round one, a lot of you all did a great job. The applications were in on time. Nobody tried to sneak it in, because even if you try to sneak them in, they won't get in. We won't accept them. So please adhere to the due dates here. All checklist items must be included. Okay, you have 5 business days to cure any deficiencies. So just pay attention to the dates. If by any chance that these dates change, it will be done by a letter of clarification. What does that mean? Your letter of clarification doesn't mean that you're going to send me an email and I'm going to answer your email. You can send me email questions, but all questions will be answered formally by letter of clarification, and they will be posted. Now, Gerard works on Ray's team, and I have Tim Johnson on my team back there. Now, Gerard would be sending communications to you all when something is updated, so you wouldn't have to just go looking around on the system to try to find things. So we're going to try to keep you updated. But another thing, if you're new to this and we don't have your email address, please make sure you provide that to us so you can get the communication as well. So once again, I am the procurement cop. I don't wear an HPD suit, but I wear an HCDD suit, which says that it's transparent. Let's all be in compliance. Please do not contact anybody after this meeting, except to one round. And we will get your questions answered. They are the subject matter people, not me. I'm just the one that's going to make sure your answers get out on the website, okay? So with that said, enjoy yourself and let's make some deals.
That's right. So, yes, you love me, everybody loves me, but Tawana, you love Tawana more than me. So after today, she is a person you want to be very friendly with. All righty. So yeah, Tawana quickly went through here, and she's right. This is an estimated timeline. Let me just kind of give you a summary of where we are in round one. We were happy and thrilled. We had got a lot of great transactions. And made announcements one in June and another one in July, and got right to work on a lot of deals. I will say, though, when it came to things, getting through, because right now we're administering a $1.3 billion grant. It is not just a multifamily program that we're operating here. And it's not just us. We have a partner at the GLO who is also we're working with. So I will say we did, in the round one, prioritize transactions that received 9% tax credits because they had a deadline for the most part. And several of those transactions we did not close by November 30th for a lot of reasons. Some environmental reviews took longer than we anticipated. Our legal staff is working at max capacity. Our staff is working at max capacity. I will say that we are going to work as quickly and as fast as we can to get your transaction to close in a timely manner. However, while you're working with land sellers, while you're working with a lot of partners that you need to make a deal happen, I will say you probably need to anticipate a 12 to 18 month period at roughly, in order for us to be able to come to the table, be able to close and finance your deal. We are working as quick as we can to build up the capacity, build the staff, and build the processes that we need to make this faster in round two. We learned a lot in round one, and we've are developing a system. I will say this is, again, the largest amount of financing the department has administered ever. So, and it just takes time. It takes a lot of manpower to do it. So these are just estimated time frames, but I just want to put that out there that we're going to work as quickly as possible. When your deal is announced, you will have a relationship manager, an underwriter assigned to it, and there's a long process in which to get your transaction to City Council. But just be mindful of the time frame that 12 to 18 months has been kind of an expected period. All right. Mike Forenza will talk to you a little bit about the process which we go through to make sure your deals are federally compliant from a design standard.
Well, ADA, for those of you who have ever worked with federal funding, ADA is a huge pain in the neck. I'm not going to change it. I can't put sugar on it, make it sweeter. It is. It's a pain in the neck. If you try to make sense out of it, you turn white-headed. And the reason why we do it, because there's people out there that are handicapped that need it. That's the first. The second is because HUD requires it. We hear a lot of complaining. We hear a lot of we shouldn't have to. This is wrong. This is not right. It's not us. We can blame it on HUD. Sorry. It's their rules. We have to abide by them. I will tell you this, that we use 2010 ADA with the 11 HUD exceptions. You're going to probably hear me say that about 5 or 6 times. Because what happens is most of you already have an architect. You've already got some of your plans drawn. Well, those plans are no longer, if you accept the HUD funding or the funding, your plans are now going to have to get changed because you're going to have to put the accessibility in there. You might have had fair housing in there, but you didn't have this in there. I will tell you, if there's an architect in the room, please don't throw things at me right now, but 98% of the architects that I have worked with over the last 10 years do not understand ADA. They will tell you they do. They understand fair housing. They understand certain parts of it, but they don't totally understand. So what you're going to hear is, oh, yeah, we've got that. Yeah, we can do it. But ask a little bit more than, yeah, we've got that. We can do it. Because what happens is time is money. And what I see over and over and over is the architect will start reading because he doesn't really or she doesn't really understand the standard, so they're going to read it. And they find a little section in there that says if it's physically or if you can't do it, you just can't do it because my land won't be right. I can't design it that way because I don't have enough land. So we're exempt. And then they'll call me and they'll go, oh, we found this in there, we're exempt. Well, what HUD says is that if you accept the funding, you accept these standards, and your property will meet these standards. We can't give you a get out of jail free card on any of it. The only thing we can do is give it to you in the very beginning, like we're doing today, so you can get with your architect. If your architect has to hire someone to help them, I would recommend it because, again, time is money. The second thing that we hear a lot on rehabs is, oh, we should be grandfathered. HUD does not have a family, does not have aunts, uncles, cousins, and for darn sure, they don't have a grandfather. So that's not in there. Now, all the architects will say, well, we want a waiver. I don't think there's anybody in this room is special enough to get a waiver from HUD that's going to change things that's already established in 50 states. If they gave it to you, then they're going to have to change all of their policies because it's like in the legal, if they change it, everybody's going to start coming in saying, oh, well, you did it for them. So it's not going to happen. So don't make that a criteria. We don't have to do it because we're going to get a waiver. There's no waivers. The way that we make sure that your project is compliant is in the very beginning when your plans are to the ready to go to planning. They're ready. We have a third-party consultant that will give you the information. You will get with them, set up a review of your plans. They will review your plans. They will make a report, has comments on it. You'll be able to then go to your architect. The architect can ask questions. They can make comments. Most of all, they can correct the plans. Once the plans have been corrected, then they'll go back through just to make sure that they corrected the plans to do one thing, but in doing that, they caused another problem. We see that all the time. So those will continue to go back and forth until the accessibility consultant gives them the thumbs up. Once you get that, then those plans will have to go to the GLO for them to be for their inspection or review. We do not have a time set when you have to have those plans completed. The GLO does. They have to, before you can go vertical, you have to have the GLO's approval on your plans. Their definition of vertical is anything above the slab. So that's your time frame. If you're, bear in mind that we use one third-party consultant. It's not a huge company. They take time. GLO has one person that reviews it, not just for us, but for the whole state. For every GLO project comes through his desk. So it's not one of those automatic, you turn it in today and you get it back on Friday. No. It's going to take a while. So please plan on that. Don't call us and say, hey, man, we got people standing around and we need to go vertical and the GLO's taking time. And it's nothing that we can do. It's their time that they have. So please do it early. If you have questions, you can ask. You can call after. But once everything's started, we'll give you the name of the third-party consultant, and you can ask them questions as well, or the architect can ask them questions while they're making their designs. The next thing is when the project reaches 50%, or when you have one of each type of ADA units, sheetrock, maybe cabinets in, commodes in, so they can have something to look at. The third-party consultant will come out and do an inspection. Again, they will write a report with comments. That way they can correct it. Your GC and your superintendent can make those corrections. Once those corrections are made, the GLO comes out and they do their inspection. Okay? Then at the final, when you're done, everything's complete, we'll do the same thing. Our third-party consultant will come out. They'll do an inspection. They'll give you a report. You'll fix those. They'll come back again to make sure that they're completed. Once you get a thumbs up for the third time from them, the GLO will come out and they will do their inspection. So there's two different inspections and a review that goes along with it. Okay? And none of the retainage will be released until the GLO releases gives you a release of that everything accessibly is completed.
Thank you, Mike. All right. So while we're on the subject of design, one of the new items we brought in was with our partners from the Recovery Office. Marissa will talk to you about some of the resilient design standards that we're going to be looking for in some of these deals.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Marissa Aho, and I'm the Chief Resilience Officer for Mayor Turner. Excited to join you today. What we have for you is a resilience checklist that we have added. It is based on the strategies for multifamily building resilience by enterprise community partners, particularly their recovery and rebuilding program. And we have a few copies here. It's also available online. Raise your hand if you've picked up a copy already. Raise the copy if you picked up a copy already. They look like that. So there are a few different areas, including protection, adaptation, backup measures, community, the green building standards that were in the first round, and we've incorporated them into the checklist in this round. Solar that was in the first round, we've incorporated that and increased it in this round. Adding EV ready as another component, and then green infrastructure, green stormwater infrastructure as another component. So in the checklist, it should be very easy to use. We've asked for a minimum of 12 points. There are many points that could be achieved, and it's flexible in terms of which components in which categories you are either already including or would like to include in a particular project. So some examples under protection include wet flood proofing, dry flood proofing, backwater valves, sump pumps. Under adaptation, envelope efficiency, elevated equipment, elevated living spaces. Under community, creating community resilience spaces, or developing an emergency management manual. So the guide is there. Also for the green stormwater infrastructure components, one resource that can be used is the city's Incentives for Green Development report that was released in August and is also available online, and we can get you a link if you don't have it.
Thank you, Marissa. Yep. And yeah, and so I just want to, this is going to be an item. The 12 points is a threshold item. So you need to go through the report, pick the items that where you're going to get 12 points, and you got to get the 12 points in order to be evaluated for the scoring process, which we're going to talk to you about now. But you just want to emphasize that some of these components, they're already in there, right? So within the federal standards, we have green building standards. So there's some points for you already, right? And so, through the work with the Resiliency Office, we wanted to make sure that we are setting a standard for the transactions, especially as this is disaster recovery money. We're building transactions that become basically more ready for the next storm when it does happen. So we just want to make sure that we are prepping for that. So I just want to make it clear that it is a threshold item that you meet the 12-point standard. And then as far as the selection criteria, it will be something we will be evaluating when we're. Speaking of which, I'm going to turn it back over to Ryan, and he's going to be talking about some of the factors we look at when we select transactions.
Thanks, Ray. Okay, key scoring criteria. Some of the aspects of the deal that we'll be looking at, we love small, mid-sized firms, but we also like those firms that have proven track records. So if you're a small, mid-sized firm, do not have a proven track record, we request that you do a joint venture with some developer experience. We're looking for years of experience, track record. We want to be evaluating the number of transactions that the developer has completed, and financial capacity. Location. Complete communities. It will be prioritizing areas such as complete communities, concerted revitalization areas, and, mic is not working. Projects that has poverty rate lower than 25%. If your poverty rate is higher than 25%, there's ways you can mitigate that if it's in a CRA or a complete community. Complete community location that we'll be prioritizing will be a complete community that have a approved plan. So there's the first tranche, first 5 that are approved. The second tranche, the second 5 have not been approved. So we'll be looking at the first set of 5. Project information that we'll be looking for is project readiness. Ray mentioned it earlier. We look for projects that can execute quickly within 12, 18 months closing at the closing date. Mixed income, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but 30%, 50%, 60%, 80% AMI. And local support. We'll do a cost analysis. We'll be looking at the leveraging on these deals. Can't just be our money. Other sources has to be involved. On the performance analysis, we'll be looking at that in regards to anything that's kicking off 1.5 debt coverage ratio and above. We'll be looking at that closely. Maybe you don't need our funds that is kicking out that much.
When these transactions come in and transactions are scored, we do a scoring evaluation, and there's a committee that does that. I will say it is not just based on that. There is a qualitative evaluation that is done as well. This committee will sit here, they will look at the transactions, they will talk about the transactions. And the scores are quantitative, they are a result of the actual factual information on the deal. But there needs to be a qualitative factor that the transaction meets ultimately one of the priorities that we're trying to do within the city. So I just wanted to make it clear there is a quantitative, qualitative, and that in these transactions get evaluated and reviewed several times. And there is a process in which if you are not one of the lucky recipients, there is an appeal process that you can go through as well. And we're an open door as much as we can be. A lot of people ask, why not me? We're happy to sit down and talk to you if your transaction is not selected, and we will tell you why. But I wanted to just make it clear there is a quantitative and qualitative process in which we go through to make sure that we're picking the deals that we feel like are exemplifying what we want to do with these funds. So I just want to make that clarification. Now, Crystal, yes, let me give you an opportunity to talk about all the fun stuff about Section 3 and then WSBE.
All right, thank you. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Crystal Boyce. For any of you who may not be familiar with me or contract compliance, I am the division manager over the contract compliance section within the Compliance and Monitoring Division. For the purpose of this meeting, I will be discussing compliance requirements that will be subject on project activities for this reference RFP. The Minority Women-Owned Small Business Enterprise, the HUD Section 3 program, as well as the City of Houston's Pay or Play program. By a show of hands, how many of you all are familiar with the Minority Women-Owned Small Business Enterprise program that is administered through the Office of Business Opportunity, or any projects that have been administered through the Housing Department? Excellent. So how many of you all, by a show of hands, are familiar with the Section 3 program? Excellent. And so this will be a refresher for you all, I'm sure. How about the Pay or Play program? Okay. All right. So I know where I need to dive in. So let's get started. The MWSBE program requirements, we're governed by federal procurement laws as well as the City of Houston Chapter 15 ordinance to ensure to the maximum extent minority women-owned small business firms are utilized to the maximum extent possible on these federal contracting opportunities, okay? And so for that reason, there will be a 34% MWBE goal advertised on this RFP. What this means is, if you are one of the awardees of this financial assistance on this project, you will be subject to demonstrate good faith efforts to meet the 34% MWBE goal requirements, okay? Only firms that are certified through the City of Houston Office of Business Opportunity may be utilized towards your participation minimum goal requirements. Again, only firms certified through the City of Houston Office of Business Opportunity may be utilized towards your achievement of your 34% MWBE goal requirements, okay? Do not submit a plan that has someone that with a pending application with the City of Houston. Only those are firms that are certified at the time of your solicitation advertisement, okay? For more information, I looked before I came into the meeting. There are now over 3,500 certified MWBE firms in the online directory. For a list to review that information, and you can also download the directory, go to www.houston.mwdbe.com. You can get that list and you can filter that list. You can also search through commodity codes or through the construction types. Feel free to review that information. There are a lot of qualified minority small business owned companies that are eager to perform on these projects and that can assist you with meeting your MWBE goal requirements. Okay? Section 3. For those of you who may not be familiar with Section 3, often confused with Section 8, which is totally different. Okay? So Section 3 is a program that was implemented by HUD to ensure, to the greatest extent feasible, that certain HUD federal assistance for projects such as public construction, housing construction, and any type of rehabilitation type of projects keep opportunities within the local community. And so for any contractor that works on this project with a contract in excess of $100,000, they will be subject to comply with these Section 3 requirements. So before you start soliciting for these contractors, if anyone contacts you with interest in these projects, please be sure to remind them of the compliance requirements that they will be subject to. The general contractor first, the first head, the first person or the first firm that we will be reviewing their demonstration for compliance with meeting these goal requirements will be the prime contractor. And so within your solicitation documents, the advertisement package that these general contractors are required to submit back to you, I will be expecting to see their Section 3 participation plan. So before I allow you to proceed on the project activities, the owner-developer must submit on behalf of your general contractors their Section 3 participation plan, okay? So make sure you go through our directory. It's online and just real time to get a list of certified and qualified contractors who can assist you with meeting your Section 3 numerical goal requirements, okay? So the question is, what is a Section 3 business or what is a Section 3 resident? A Section 3 business can qualify under one of three categories, okay? The first one would be if at least 51% or more of your firm is owned by someone who would qualify as a Section 3 resident, okay? The second qualifier would be if at least 30% of your permanent full-time staff would qualify as Section 3 residents. The third qualifier would be if you can give us a pledge letter to award at least 25% of your future contracts to Section 3 businesses that qualify under categories 1 or 2, as well as providing us evidence that you are currently or in the past have awarded at least 25% of your contract to a Section 3 business concern, okay? A Section 3 resident is someone who, based on HUD published income limits, are actually considered low income. Low income based on HUD published income limits. The 2019 limits had a maximum income limit for households at about $80,600. But of course, that's based on household composition. And so for a household of 1 or 2, it would be far less than that $80,600 for a household of 8, okay? The process to certify as a Section 3 business concern or a Section 3 resident is located here. Only those firms that are certified through the City of Houston Housing and Community Development Department can be utilized towards achievement of your Section 3 minimum numerical goal requirements, okay? So now, don't get that confused with your NWP requirements, who requires certified firms to be certified through the Office of Business Opportunity. With our Section 3 goal requirements, they must be certified through our office. I've seen it all. So if you have a contractor that tells you, I'm certified, I promise, I have my Section 3 business certification, take a moment to look in our online directory. It's real time, it's updated as soon as a Section 3 application is approved. Make sure you can verify that on our actual directory. We do encourage you all to take advantage of the HUD self-certification. However, we do a little bit more vetting on our projects, and so we don't want you to be encouraged to utilize our directory, and we don't have any evidence that they actually have experience in the field of certification that they're seeking their certification. So make sure if they have a HUD self-certification through HUD.gov, that's acceptable on maybe other projects, but on this project, they must be certified through our office. We do additional vetting, okay? Workforce provisions. As previously mentioned, there are some additional provisions on these DR-17 Harvey-funded multifamily projects. And so not only do you have the numerical goal requirements for Section 3, 10% of your hard cost budget must be directed to Section 3 business concerns, okay? 3% of your soft cost budget must be directed to Section 3 business concerns. And also 30% of your permanent new hires, seasonal, permanent, any employees that you have for new employment opportunities must be directed to Section 3 residents, okay? So those are your 3 numerical goal requirements for Section 3. However, you also have some additional provisions. The additional provisions for residents is that at least 10% of all work labor hours must be performed by Section 3 residents. So what does this mean? If you know you have a good crew that's going to be working on your project, and they usually work for you on all of the projects that you participate on, it's probably a good time for you to go on and encourage them to get their Section 3 resident application. I like to refer to it as a bonus to working with your firm. And so if you have any employees who are hesitant, make sure to let them know that we do not share their information with anyone. Oftentimes, residents or employees may feel as if it'll mess up any type of government benefits that they receive, and it does not, okay? And so encourage them to get their Section 3 resident certification so that you can have, a smooth ride in compliance requirements as it relates to the standard rules as well as those additional provisions, okay? Make sure before they start on the project that you have their Section 3 certification as record and proof that they are actually certified. We can look in our online directory. It's updated Wednesday of every week with any new Section 3 residents, okay? Pay or play. So pay or play is a city policy that was implemented to ensure a level playing field during bidding opportunities by contractors who provide healthcare incentives to their employees versus those that do not, okay? And so what this means is that any contract in excess of $200,000 will be subject to comply with pay or play requirements, okay? And those type of contract opportunities are professional service, construction, which will be subject on this project. And so what the pay options are is, if you have a covered employee, A covered employee means that one, your employee is 18 years of age or older. They work at least 30 hours, regular hours worked for the contractor, and they work any amount of time on a City of Houston project, okay? That would be considered a covered employee. So if you have an employee who's 17, they won't be subject to comply with these requirements, okay? And so if you have covered employees, we expect for you to give them a pay or play option. If you select to pay on the project, that means that you will pay $1 per regular hour worked on City of Houston projects towards that employee. However, this money does not go to the employee, so make sure when you're talking to your employees about the pay or play options that they understand that they will not get an additional dollar on their salary. This goes into this big, large contractor's responsibility fund that helps offset the cost for uninsured employees or residents around the City of Houston and Harris County, okay? The play option. If you select to do the play option, which I highly recommend because that really is impactful for those uninsured residents and employees. If you choose the play option, the employer will contribute at a minimum $150 towards their insurance premium on a monthly basis. And in turn, that employee should be not required to enter into more than $150 into the premium requirement. So they should not be contributing no more than 50% of what the total is, which is maximized at $150, okay? The additional provisions. All Section 3 residents, as well as all apprentice workers, must receive pay or play incentives. Are there any questions? I thank you for your time, and I wish you good luck on the upcoming RFP.
Thank you, Crystal. All right, Mary Bell. Is Mary Bell here? I haven't seen. Oh, there you are. Hey, Mary Bell will come up and talk to you about Davis-Bacon.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maribel Rodriguez, and I'm supervisor for the Davis-Bacon team. And today I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to go over the Davis-Bacon. I'm going to give you an overview. So does anybody know a little history about Davis-Bacon? Okay, so Davis-Bacon was enacted in 1931 during the Great Depression to give workers fair wages and to provide contractors or the opportunity to bid on federal contracts. The act was enacted signed by law by President Hoover, and the reason why it's called Davis-Bacon, which is a weird name, is because of the senators that enacted it. It was Senator James Davis and Representative Robert Bacon. So the Davis-Bacon Act relates or applies to all federally assisted projects, and they could be federally assisted through grants, loans, and loan guarantees. That requires that contractors and subcontractors, pay laborers, I'm sorry. Excuse me, I'm a little nervous. Okay. So it requires that all the subcontractors, contractors pay their workers prevailing wages. Okay, so the first thing that happens once you are awarded a loan from the city, and you have your loan agreement already enacted, what's going to happen is that you are going to need to submit a request for contract compliance to make sure that your general contractor is not debarred from not receiving federal funds. So that form is found in the City of Houston website. You can go ahead and download it and fill it out and submit it so that we can go through and verify that they are eligible to receive funds. The other thing that's going to be, that's going to have to happen is that you go and submit a request for general wage decisions. That way we can issue the wages that are applicable to the job that you are actually constructing. And that form is also found in the City of Houston website. So once we have those forms submitted, what's going to happen is that we're going to, like I said, we're going to go ahead and make sure they're cleared. Your general contractor is clear. We're going to issue the wages, and you guys are going to be ready to issue your contract with the GC once you receive those items. And you're going to have to make sure that your contract with the GC has both items, the general wage decision and the labor standards, in the contract. And that goes for your subcontractors as well. So once the GC gets his contract and the GC gets his subcontractors, their agreements, those two items need to be part of that. Now, if we find that those two items, the labor standards and the general wage decisions, are not part of the agreement or the contract, we will ask you to make sure that you incorporate it in a form of a change order. Oh, so this is for... Oh, I must have been pushing. Okay, so if you're a general contractor and you are, I'm sorry, if you're the developer hiring a general contractor and you are putting a bid out to actually procure your contractor, what you're going to have to have the HUD 4010, which are the labor standard provisions, in your bid packet. So make sure that's in the bid packet. So basically, once the Davis-Bacon triggers, once you, because you already got your contract, and that means that you've already Davis-Bacon applicable, then what's going to happen is that all your subcontractors, everybody in the project, is required to receive prevailing wages. So your subcontractors in lower tiers are required to pay them prevailing wages, and they must pay their workers on a weekly basis, not bi-weekly, but on a weekly basis. Also, you must submit a weekly certified payroll, and they also must submit all the compliance documentation that we are requiring for them to submit. And also any supporting documentation for their payroll. One more thing that I want to add to is that we do assign one of our senior contract compliance officers to each project, and they monitor the compliance of the project. And you will be getting a monthly report with the status of your compliance, and you are supposed to or required to make sure you address those compliance issues within 10 to 15 days in order to avoid any payment delays. I think that's all I have for you, if you have any questions.
Thank you. And let me add one thing, though, too, when it comes to Davis-Bacon. This time last year, we had a number of applications with 4-story residential transactions built on podiums. With Davis-Bacon guidance, 4-story, you get a residential wage rate if you're a residential transaction with 4 stories. We have received guidance, and we're still awaiting final guidance from the Department of Labor and the GLO on this, but it looks like they are making a determination that if you have a 4-story residential that's above on a podium, and your podium ground level includes an entrance, includes a leasing center, includes even some de minimis use, that first story can be that first ground level can be constituted a story. We have submitted, and then at that point, commercial Davis-Bacon wages apply. In that case, commercial wage, they're roughly, about 25% higher than the residential wage scale. So we have had to go and make determinations on several transactions as commercial wage scales, and we have adjusted our grants accordingly, because of the higher wages because of those. I just want to let you know that we have not received final determination. We have requested waivers and decisions to be counted as residential structures. As of now, we have not, and we have not received the guidance that would be constituted residential. So I just want to put that out there. If you're planning on a 4-story residential above a podium, commercial Davis-Bacon wages would apply, even with de minimis uses on the ground level. So that's something I just wanted to make a note for everybody. So we're now going to talk about URA. There you are. You got the clicker. Here we go.
All right, thank you, Ray. Good afternoon. My name is Juan Barrera. I am with the URA team here at the Housing Department, and my presentation this afternoon will cover the URA. So what is the URA? The URA is the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisitions Act of 1970 as amended. This is a federal law that establishes the minimum standards for real property acquisition and relocation assistance. The objectives of the URA are to provide uniform, fair, and equitable treatment of persons whose real property is being acquired or who have to relocate as a result of a federally funded project. So, what are the components of the URA, and how does the URA apply to your specific project? If your project involves an acquisition, a demolition, a conversion, a reconstruction, or a rehabilitation, then the URA applies. If there are tenants that must be relocated as a result of a federally funded project, developers must comply with the URA policy as well as with the City of Houston's policies and procedures dealing with relocation. Tenants that must be relocated are afforded relocation assistance. Depending on the project, tenants could potentially be eligible to receive assistance for moving expenses and receive rental assistance. So how much is relocation going to cost? Relocation costs depend on a number of factors. The biggest factor is project complexity. What type of project are you engaging in? Is it a rehabilitation project that will require tenants to be temporarily moved out and then moved back in to the newly rehabbed complex? Are you engaging in a demolition new construction project that will require tenants to be permanently displaced and never to return back? The number of tenants, that's a big factor. Are you relocating 10 tenants or are you relocating 100? The type of tenants. Are you relocating residential tenants or are you relocating a business, non-residential tenants? So those are a number of factors. The City of Houston highly recommends that relocation specialists be hired. Relocation specialists have dedicated teams that interview tenants, that develop relocation plans and budgets, and also issue required notices. Professional fees for a relocation specialist range between $20,000 and $150,000, depending on the project. Although we highly recommend that relocation specialists be hired, it is not a requirement. If you have the resources, the manpower, and the time, developers can manage the relocation process. All right. So in here, I have a list of prerequisite documents that must be submitted with the ANOVA application. We have two components. we have acquisition components, and we have, depending on your project, relocation components. So on the acquisition side, we have a number of documents. A number of them will have to be executed by both buyers and sellers. They essentially assure that URA policy will be followed. They also certify that acquisition process is voluntary. And they also provide an occupancy status. Is the property being acquired vacant? Is there a structure there? How many tenants are there? On the relocation component side, we need a relocation plan. What is the strategy behind the relocation process? How are you going to relocate the people? Relocation budget, how much is it going to cost? And obviously a rent roll. How many tenants are you going to relocate? The last item, general information notices, that is not exactly a prerequisite document. That is a very important document, however. That is a notice that must be provided to all tenants. It essentially advises tenants that an agency has applied for federal financial assistance, and if approved, they could receive, or they may be eligible to receive, relocation assistance. That one, we recommend that those notices be issued to tenants shortly after the submittal of the NOFA application. All right, so the URA team works with the relationship managers. We work with relocation specialists. We work with developers. We provide all of the required documentation. We provide very detailed guidebooks that cover the different relocation scenarios. And so we ask that accurate information be provided to us in order to prevent any delays or setbacks in the progress of your application. We do regular monitoring reviews. We do site visits in order to ensure compliance with the URA is being followed. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Thank you. I see we have a question. Yes, there has to be acquisition documents, but there wouldn't be any relocation documents. Mm-hmm. Yes. All right.
Great timing. Thank you, Juan. All right, so that actually launches into questions. All right, so the moment of truth. So some of you eager beavers have already submitted a list of questions, and so I'm going to get the ones here in writing first because these are doozies, and I'm glad I don't have to write out a response to some of these. I could just tell you in person. So I'm going to do these first, and then we'll go around the room for various questions, and I'll hand it off to my team members for stuff that I can't answer, which will probably be the case. Is there an available list of nonprofit organizations that have received funding from the City of Houston? The answer is we always publish our awards, either through a press release or other type of announcement. If you're looking for like all the investments we've done with nonprofits, it sounds like a request that should be submitted through our to our PIO team through the Texas Public Information Act. So feel free to do so. But otherwise, all of our awards are posted with press releases, usually in June or July. Second question. I'll read this all out, but this there are only a certain amount of funds available for this round of the program. How will those fundings be distributed? For example, if there are 20 projects that meet the criteria and are ranked, would all 20 projects receive some type of funding, or are you only certain projects guaranteed funding based on the position on the list? So going back to the selection criteria. So right now so this is a $350 million program. We have currently in the pipeline $165 million that we are currently reviewing. Not all of them is closed, but that's currently what's subscribed right now. So doing the math, there's roughly, a little right under 200 million left. So still a lot of availability and amount to distribute. So we are going to be distributing basically on the number of projects we feel selected or viable through this round. Is it likely we're going to select up to $200 million through this round? The answer is no. Ryan and his team would probably quit tomorrow if we put that type of pipeline on them to close. So most likely there will be a third round this time next year to subscribe the rest of the funds. Long story short, we're going to select the number of transactions we feel like we can do internally. Our target is subscribing up to $100 million. We may go more. We will not likely do less, but that is the target, to make sure that we are fully subscribing those funds. We have roughly about 4 years left to subscribe and close out this grant, so time is of the essence. So we do need to subscribe these. So hopefully that answered that question. All right, if awarded, are acquisitions costs reimbursable if we pay to secure site control prior to award? I'm assuming these are financing costs. They are CDBG eligible to the extent that we are doing reimbursement. So we're not going to, allow you to sell the same piece of dirt to a limited partnership at a premium. We're going to reimburse you what you paid for the site. Financing costs are a CDBG eligible expense, but we'll have to review those within the budget. If we negotiate with the property owner, if we were to negotiate with the property owner the time needed to close the escrow, what is the anticipated time and number of months you expect to take before it becomes available? I'll go back to my earlier comment I made at the middle of the presentation. We anticipate to make our award announcements this summer. June is usually our targeted time frame. From that point on, we start underwriting the transactions, prioritizing the 9% transactions first, because there is a readiness component again this year, and with the 4% transactions or other type of financing to be underwritten afterwards. So we would highly advise that, again, while you are doing your negotiations with land sellers and your partners, to anticipate anywhere up to 12 to 18 months to close into the financing from today. So knowing that you may not close into your transaction until June of 2021, potentially. So I would just prepare for that type of time frame. Great, thank you, Nathan. Great point. So there's been requests that for transactions we were underwriting, because there are some sensitivities on timing, if they could close with their own funds, not using federal funds. Great point, and I'm glad you brought this up. The day you apply for your funds, a lot of triggers happens. The ERA triggers happens, environmental review eligibility happens. The day you apply for those funds, you're basically locked in, meaning you cannot do any choice limiting action on that property. That means buying a piece of land. That means entering into any type of contract agreement where our funds would be involved with. Until we do our environmental assessments and we get authorization to use grant funds, you can't do any of that. So to the extent that if you bought the property before you apply, that could be eligible. Please bring those transactions to us before you make any of those types of actions. But when you apply for those funds, clock starts ticking. So thank you for that clarification. All right. More questions. At what stage of the LIHTC process is the project expected to be in order to apply for these funds? Is it okay for DR funds to be first committed funds on the project? To answer the first question, what stage is it expected? So again, if you're planning to apply in the 9% rounds, which many applicants are, we need an application from you in order, if you're going to submit a letter to the TDHCA, that you're going to be also getting our funds. So meaning before the February 28th date when those applications are due, we need your application to us so we can write a letter to the TDHCA and you saying, yes, you've applied for the funds and here are the terms of the financing. So, and then is it okay for DR funds to be committed first into the project? That answer for the most part is yes. We are first money in. We can be used for acquisition. We often put our money out first to buy the land. And then during construction, often there's a bridge lender who's actually paying the actual draws, and then there's a reimbursement draw that's submitted to us where we fund anywhere from 30 to 45 days afterwards, assuming compliance has signed off. So, but to that extent that we will fund in first, as a reminder, I don't know if we put it in the presentation, but in each one of our grants, we have a holdback of a 10% retainage on the entire grant, no matter what the use. So you may have negotiated retainage provisions with your general contractor. This is not the same as our retainage provisions. We take a 10% cut off the top, and we hold that until project closeout and make sure all the compliance items are finished out. So just keep that in mind that, yes, we will be first money in. We want to put the money in quickly, But we have a 10% retainage on everything to make sure that we have something to hold over your head to make sure you do what we want you to do. So, at the time of application, does the city expect all third-party reports to be complete? No. So there are things that are outlined within the application that we absolutely have to have. Things like an environmental report. We do not require at the time of application. If your transaction is selected, you are eligible to submit it then. I will say that 9 times out of 10, environmental reports are done up front, mostly because you're the requirement for like a tax credit application. And if that's the case, if you already have that, go ahead and submit it. But environmental report, appraisals, you do not need to get submit an appraisal with your transaction. That's something that we secure in conjunction with the lender during the time of underwriting. Plan and cost review, same thing. So any third-party reports of that nature can be submitted after your project is selected and we start underwriting. Let's see. I think I answered that question. Under what timeline does the city anticipate a project to expend CDB funds if allocated an award? I think I've covered that already. If I didn't, raise your hand and let me know if I need to clarify. And pretty much, I think that closes that out. All right, there's a lot more questions. I'm going to just start taking questions along the room, and I'll follow up with these. I saw your hand first. Go ahead.
I had a question about the compliance requirements for new construction versus rehabilitation.
Okay.
We talked about the 12 checklist items for
Correct.
So on the part of new construction, does that mean it doesn't apply to rehab?
Yeah, good point. So if you're doing a rehabilitation and those standards that you saw, Marissa, I don't know if that's something we can go into more detail on, but this is specifically for new construction that we were looking for those resiliency standards. Let me know if I'm incorrect on that item. Does that answer your question? Okay. As far as, I think the one other major standard would be a green building standard. We do not expect rehabs, and it's not required for rehabs to become LEED or meet those other. There is a HUD green energy checklist that's included within our NOFA that you can link to that rehabs must comply with. Okay, yes. I would have to say we'd have to look at the scope of what you're qualifying as major rehab. When things, if you're doing kind of a tertiary, just ripping out carpet and cabinets, and you're not going beyond the walls. And I don't want to throw a dollar out there, but you're about $40,000 a unit. That we probably wouldn't constitute major. If you're taking down the walls, going in and doing the MEP, that would probably trigger. But honestly, it's we know it when we see it. It just depends on the scope. Okay, Bobkin.
On the first or second slide, there was reference to interest rate 1% subject to cash flow.
Right.
So I don't know what the cash flow means, and the
Yeah.
question really is, can it be deferred or be a soft loan, or is it completely hard?
So the financing terms, yes. So yes, with this grant, the city requires a 1% interest-only payment. But again, subject to cash flow, meaning if there's no NOI in any particular year, it's not hard, right? So telling your lenders and investors they don't underwrite it. And to go into further detail, I don't know if it was on the slide, but we also will cap the amount up to 50% of your NOI. So you have 1% interest-only payment or 50% of the NOI, whatever's less, and we will just take that. PSH transactions do not apply. But again, subject to cash flow, and about that interest-only payment, we will defer it, or we will subordinate to deferred developer fee and all the stuff that the investor wants. But this is coming up on recent deals. Some people have wanted to have like a GP payment or some asset management fee going back to the developer ahead of our 1% interest-only payment, and we don't agree to that. Everybody else can get paid, but you get paid out of NOI. So, yep. Question? Yeah. Right, the two application limit, yeah, the two application limitation. It does apply to both if you're doing a deal directly and a joint venture. It will apply to both. So if you are a material partner within a deal, I think the 20% threshold, it will apply to you as well. Well, so there are certain standards that we require. So the prioritization for nonprofits, so to speak. So when we're looking at joint ventures, and I don't have it right here in front of me, but I think we're looking. It's very similar to what's in the QAP, but we're looking for at least a percentage of material participation or a percentage of GP ownership or certain items. That does still apply. To the extent that a nonprofit has material interest with any deal, if you're getting all those same considerations, like of the economics and ownership of the transaction, you're most likely going to be considered a material partner. So under that scenario, you still would be limited to 2 transactions. Okay. Yes. Yes. No fun RFP. Traditionally in the past, we put these under what we call no RFPs, request for proposals. Now we're calling NOFAs, notice of funding availability. We do that to help differentiate what things that we do in-house with our in-house procurement group and things that have to go to SPD, our central purchasing division. So we changed the nomenclature a bit just to try to differentiate stuff that we do in-house versus outside. Really, at the end of the day, we're requesting proposals and putting money out. We just changed that nomenclature to help differentiate what we do here versus at Central. You're actually a beneficiary. So you're not neither, as a developer, you're a beneficiary of our funds much like a homeowner is, which is why, we don't have to follow strict federal procurement standards because developers are the beneficiaries of our funds. So, okay. Yes, go ahead, sorry, then you.
So, when it came down to, the Congress made some of the mixed income composition as a criteria. 51% being designated within the same.
Right.
If the project was skewed towards the lowest percentage of Section 8, would that still qualify? Are you looking to have apply to that?
So yeah, so I guess the question was when it comes to mixed income composition, what are we looking for, right? We like to see a good number of the units reserved for market. We're trying to promote mixed income households. At the bare minimum, 51% of your units have to be rent restricted at the rents that we've targeted here. Based on the economics of your deal, how many market rate units can you put into your transaction? We support that and promote that. And if you want to, send in an application that's 49% market rate unit in the transaction and 51% affordable, I would say that would be something within that particular category would be prioritized. But there are also other transactions, specifically like permanent supportive housing, where you're not going to have a lot of market rate units in there. We take that into consideration. So that's going to be on a case-by-case evaluation. But if it's a standard family deal, we would like to see a composition of mixed income. Ryan? Right. So if I would hopefully what it says in the NOFA, if you have a failing grade from TEA, it would not meet threshold review. A failing grade from Children at Risk, which is a different standard, is a different evaluation. I will say the exceptions that we make to that, if your transaction is first a rehabilitation that's already zoned to the school, that does not apply. If your transaction is going to be located within a concerted revitalization, either within a complete community or TERS, it will not apply. And again, permanent supportive housing doesn't apply to that policy as well. But if it's on a failing grade from the TEA, otherwise on a standard family deal, it would not be eligible. Okay. Lots of hands. I don't know where to go first. Let me go back here. I'm sorry? No, we do not impose that requirement on senior transaction. That's also exempt. Thank you for that. So, yes. Yes. Yeah. Right. We had in the last year's NOFA, we put the percentages of where things are rated. Going back, there hasn't been a whole lot of changes to those percentages, but there were a lot of questions and confusion about how those were going to be weighted. So we took those out. So embedded within the application that you're filling out, a lot of that criteria is stuff that we built in. You can't see because it's kind of hidden. But I will say that to the extent that you're trying to hit as many points that you can. Things that we've talked about earlier, again, high opportunity areas, good schools, things that we rate very highly. Everything else is pretty much kind of a face level point system. Yes, go ahead. Section 3? Yeah. Well, that's I think so. The process becomes Section 8 certified. That's a housing authority issue. So you go through the housing authority if you're going to be getting the voucher. So you'd probably need to reach out to the either HHA or Harris County Housing Authority to go through that process for your property to become eligible to get vouchers. No, that's not a standard for our deals. You do not. Your transaction does not have to be Section 8 certified or any type of What we do say is, if you accept our money, you will accept Section 8 vouchers. So if somebody comes to you with a voucher, and then you will go through and you accept that, you will go through an inspection process with HHA to make sure it's compliant with their standards. All we're telling you is you're going to have to take those. Got it. Yes. It is, yeah. So embedded within those, yes, it's specifically for new construction. We have updated our minimum property standards. We did this almost a year ago. We haven't finalized it yet, but but these requirements are embedded. We have a section specifically for new construction, and there's a separate minimum property standard for rehabs. So obviously, yeah, you can't change the unit sizes on a rehab, but on the new construction, and these are the same standards that are outlined within the multifamily rules with the TDHCA. Yes. There should be a drop down. If you're to click that cell, there should be, say, 8 months. I think it's like 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. So you click those drop downs, and and you tell us when you plan to go to each stage. Okay. Yes.
I'm here with the National Association of Minority Contractors, and I'm hearing a big concern between prime and the subcontractors as far as their growth participation.
Okay.
There's a certain number of pools that the young lady mentioned earlier that they have right now in the city of Houston. One, half that list has bad numbers or bad contact information.
Okay.
Two, another requirement now that it has to be certified by the city of Houston as well. And three, OVO's got very funnel effects right now in getting all these applicants, subcontractors, to get their certifications.
Right.
We need to work with you guys to see what the steps y'all can take to process the certification so that the primes can be able to meet the obligations. We're working right now with several primes that are having those issues right now.
Okay.
Wondering what you guys are doing about that, or what can we do to help facilitate that?
Yeah.
big issue right now?
Sure. Let's get together after this, and we'll connect with Crystal's team and ourselves to do what we need to do to get those done in a timely fashion. I agree with you. Okay. Yes. I would so there's a little bit of chicken and the egg thing, but so you're probably going most like for 4% deals, you're most likely going to need to apply for the funds, our funds first, to know, and then you'd be eligible for a 4%. So we wouldn't necessarily advise submitting a request for a no opposition resolution now, just because you don't know if you're going to get the funds yet or not. Once you get towards the end of the process or later in the year, you get the funds, and then we think that would be the time you would go ahead and submit your request for a no opposition resolution that you would obviously get from us if you're getting money. So that's correct. And then, you know, there's the whole timing period with the TDHCA and board meetings and stuff. But yeah, that would be the time. No, NSP is pretty much closed out at this point. I don't think we have any NSP available anymore. This is all CDBG DR 17. Yes, yeah. The 50% that's required from the other funds, yeah. OPM, other people's money. We'll take most all other types of financing you want to throw at us. So yes. So first of all, 120% is too high for us. You have to have at least 51% of your units at 80% AMI and below, and with those targets that we have. So, but to the extent if you're at 120% AMI, we would pretty much consider that market for the most part. Right, but you're going to have to use the more restrictive funds, which is ours. So our funds are more restricted than what NSP says. So if NSP says, you know, if you can go up to 120% AMI, great, fantastic. We will say we will put the more restrictive provision in there that 51% of the units still have to meet, you know, our income standards. One more. Go ahead. So I heard the first part. So is there a minimum units? So under this program, the minimum amount of units is minimum of 8 units. I will say that from an economic standpoint, you know, really small transactions like 8 units or 20 unit transactions, it's really hard to leverage that other 50% of the sources that you need to make the fund. But if you have something like NSP, that could work. But I will say most of the transactions, you know, our typical size is anywhere from at the smallest 75. And the largest we've done so far, I think, is up to 150 units at this point. So, and then we also have a small rental program I know everyone's waiting on. That's going to be 7 units and less. It's going to be rolling out here in the next couple of months. So, but anyway, to go back to your question, 8 units and more is the minimum standard for the multifamily deals. Yeah, no, and once we close the application rolls, we release a list of everybody who applied within. So we have the developer name, address, the amount of the request, number of units, and so that goes on our website so everybody can see who applied. And yeah, well, yeah, because at that point it's not closed at that point. So I guess the question is, if you're applying in the 9% round, and everybody wants to know who else is applying for the city funds, is that okay? We'll look into that. You know, we always try to strive for transparency and openness and as much as we can. Right now, I don't know if we have that ability to do so, but we'll come back with a clarification if we are able to send out like a rolling list of everybody who applied at any given time. We usually wait until the application's closed to put it out, so we'll check on that. Yes. That's one. So I'm glad you brought up. So if you're coming in a plan to apply in the 9% round and you submit an application, and a couple of months go by, you get a couple of lists, and you do not look like you're going to be scoring, within 30 days we will allow you to amend your application and request more money as a 4%. But you must do that before the end of those 30 days, because during those 30 days we're doing our threshold reviews. We're making sure all the applications are checked out, but we would just consider that as one application.
So if you put in an application, 9% before February 28th,
Mhm.
the letter,
Yep.
and you decide you're not going to support it or apply, down the road, within 30 days,
You would submit an amendment to us, a revised application, requesting more money for the most part, and then it has to be within that 30 days. And then after that 30 days, we start scoring, and then we evaluate your deal as a 4% at that point.
when does the clock start ticking on that 30 days?
The day the NOFA closes. So is it the 14th that we have? The 14th. Well, March 14th. March 14th is a close. Yeah, March 14th is when we close it. So by whatever the 30 days is in March 13th. Thank you. Friday, March 13th. So by April 13th, or whatever the 30 days is after that, you must submit a revised application before that date to us consider it as a 4%. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Is there a process for
Rural waivers? Yeah. I got you. So for PSH transactions, I will say we have our minimum property standards outline. If you read it, there are exceptions for PSH deals for if you're doing like SRO or studio. I will say we are looking at the standards on on PSH deals, but I will say the minimum property standards typically applies to family and senior deals. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So, yeah. Sorry. On the presentation, we have typically announced but at the end of June. So usually how it goes, when we start scoring 30 to 45 days after that, that list has to get evaluated internally. That takes another couple of weeks process. Our big push is to make sure that our awards are posted out there, especially people who are applying in the 9% round, that are going to be contingent with credits. We want those awards out there as quick as possible. Knowing the readiness component is in fact too, because you're spending money and doing all that stuff on the design. We want to make sure we have enough runway for your, to give you the most information that you can. So if you're not going to get our money, it pencils down or whatever else that you need to do. But to answer your question, we are by the end of June is when is our target date. So thank you. Any other question, Bobkin?
sorry for repeating.
Yeah.
After this run is over and we announce the winner, then you take applications for 4%?
If you want to apply for this round, 9%, 4%, any type of transaction, this is the round for this year. So this is the one stop. We will have a third round, most likely this time next year, to fully subscribe the rest of the DR funds. But if you want to have a 4% transaction within this round, this would be the opportunity to apply.
The consideration to select projects over 4%
Would-
would be same as the 9%?
That's correct.
Second round of
That's right, and that's what we're going through right now. Through the first round, we had this big push to get the 9% closed first, and now we're starting to work on the 4% later. This will have a very likely, schedule next year, where during the 2020 round, the transactions that get the 9%, we'll start to work on those first, and then the 4% afterwards. Yes, ma'am.
In the document, there's something called an indemnity agreement. Is there a place where all the agreements and all the forms sit on the website?
Yes. I'll have to go back and verify. We should have all the Schedule A and transaction agreements embedded within the application. If they are not, we'll go back and make sure that they are. But no, there's probably about 5 or 6 different disclosures and application you need to sign and submit. We'll make sure that's all included within that Excel document. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, yeah. We'll call you and tell you to pick one. So, which we've done. We'll just say, hey, you're going to put one up to the gods, but and we do this for a number of reasons. First of all, there's always such a very robust response to these NOFAs. We want to make sure that you're pick your 2 favorite deals, pick the ones that you really feel passionate about. It just takes a lot of time and effort to go through and evaluate all these transactions. It's why we put the limitation on there. Yes, ma'am.
Under what timeline does the city anticipate a project to extend the CDBG funds if an allotted award?
The timeline. So honestly, we would rely on you to help talk about the expenditures. I'll go back and reiterate that we are open to we will be first funds in, meaning we will fund for acquisition. We will reimburse for the first several draws within the deals. So usually our deals are fully funded up to less or 10% retainage within, say, 6 months of construction. So depending how big the award is. So so if you're doing your modeling, you can count our money in there as acquisition. And if you want to just do like a bell curve or pro rata share of over the next 6 months of us funding our money in, and then one big tranche there at the end of 10% when we do close out. Okay. Yes. Yeah. One track. Well, if you have 2 different properties, 2 different partnerships, that's 2 different deals. So you would most likely be applying for CDBG funds on each. It's got its own sources and uses and its own separate transactions. We would evaluate those as 2 deals. Yes. Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, so I would say that it depends. So the owner financing, something like a seller note, something that you own yourself and you're basically loaning that back into to the partnership. Is it something like that? Yes, we would consider that as a source in the deal. If you're contributing the land or other type of equity within the deal, we would include that. Okay. And, all right. Yes. Because get them in today, because after this they all got to go to writing to Tawana. So go ahead. Yes. Good question. Not meeting threshold standards for one. So, believe it or not, we had a lot of applications or some applications not within the city limits or didn't provide the right amount of affordable transactions to us, asked for too much money. We will go back to you and say, hey, this doesn't meet standard. You need to go back and check certain things. And we'll give you that 5 business days to cure a deficiency within the transaction. So we typically see that. So just be very mindful of the threshold standards that we have within our deals. Other mistakes, I'm looking over to my team for the most part. I mean, we get we get a lot, transactions at the most part. One thing I would say that if there's a transaction that just does not seem to meet our priorities, and we seem to get a lot of those, that are not located within, targeted areas or not serving a population that we tend to, or they are not meeting the priorities, and I know I'm talking very high level, but just a lot of transactions we see that just don't fit. And sometimes, unless you come to us and talk to us, which we are very open for. As of today, you can't. We're in a closeout period. We can't talk to anybody. But after this is over and you did not get selected and you want to come, and sit with us, why not us? We will be very open and have that conversation with you. But I'm struggling a little bit on anything. Is there anything that anybody can think about? Yeah, go ahead. Right. Yes, quite. Yeah, good question. So if you're planning to apply in the 9% round, when do you need to get your application into us? I would say we would request no later than the week before the applications are due, say so by February 21st, to submit your application to us for the funds. We have gone up to the wire, sometimes to the day of application, sometimes to review it and at least provide that letter. We request don't do that. Try to give us as much time as we can, but we would request at least a week in order to be able to process it correctly. You can do earlier, absolutely. You can submit before then as well. I want to get to people who haven't asked questions yet. So. Uh-huh. Sure. So I guess I guess you're talking about regarding the sources to build your deal. Yeah, right. And I guess so the question would be, other than using funds that you would have gotten, say, from the disaster itself. So if you receive flood insurance proceeds from the disaster, or you receive FEMA proceeds from Harvey on your deal for rehabilitation, primarily this would be applied. You wouldn't be able to use the same CDBG funds. So we would do what we call a duplication of benefits analysis. So if you got disaster funds, for your deal, we would do a calculation and give you the net amount to rebuild, to rehabilitate. Other than that particular scenario of using other funds, we'll use any other types of cash for the most part. Again, there was a question regarding like NSP, or if we're the ones who administer home, but if you have it's our TERS money. If you have, I'm struggling a little bit. What other funds you may have got? You may be getting something from an unallocated TERS, or a TERS from a TERS group that we don't administer. Yeah, bring it. Yep. If it's green, we'll take it, except if it came from Harvey. So we are open for almost all types of financing. That's reasonable. And then we'll go back over here. Yes. Thank you, HTV, for broadcasting this event. We will get the recording. We'll post it on our website along with the PowerPoint deck. So we will have those available for your review. So smile, everybody. You'll be on the web forever and ever. Yes, you had another question? Oh, you got a lot of consultants in here. So we talk a lot about tax credits in here only because we finance a lot of deals with tax credits, so you hear a lot of us talk about it. It is not the only source to finance the affordable housing. Again, I reiterate, we will use all other types of financing in here, but if you're curious to learn more about the tax credit round, if I'm sure a consultant or two can raise their hand, and they're happy to talk to you more about the program. So, great. Yes, sir. Yes. Yeah. Primarily percentage. So we max out at 50% of development costs, except for permanent supportive housing transactions, which we can go higher. But 50% of the development costs is the maximum amount we will contribute to the deal. Oh, George? Okay. Okay. Answer is yes. Property condition assessment, primarily for rehabilitations. If you're submitting a rehab, that is, and I'm glad that came up, that will be a third-party report that we would need to review and evaluate at the time of application. So we do need that PCA when we review your deal. And yes, we would require that be done by an independent third party versus an in-house group. Well, let me go here and I'll go back to Robert. Yes. So I guess the question would be, would both the new construction and rehab be like one transaction? Would it be like one source of financing to do both work, or would it be two separate sources of financing to do the rehabilitation and the new construction? Let me answer that question. If it's two separate sources, then that would be two separate applications, and I'd have to just leave it up to you if when you feel like you'd be ready to apply. If it's one set of money, one pot of money where you're doing both work, then you would apply just for that. You would apply in this round. I would not split that up. So. Robert. You always ask the hard questions. So basically, this is a scattered site transaction. You had two separate deals owned by one partnership. I will say, I'm not going to make some final determination here right now, but I will initially say that we would tend towards a more conservative view, that we would then look at the deal with the higher poverty concentration and tend towards that versus the other deal. But that's one you probably let us chew on a little bit more if you could submit something in writing, and then we'll get something posted back to you and something that's a little more thoughtful than me blabbering. So, yes. Yes, sir. Okay. Mm-hmm. A okay. That's okay. So that's also a very kind of. So the question was basically, is there a way to buy it now so you would not have to go through this prolonged 18-month schedule and wait for a very patient property owner in order to sell your property? This is something where you get into environmental clearance, and honestly, I'm not the expert on it. I would need, kind of our environmental group to come in and help weigh in to answer that question. That if you bought it before the application date, are you good? I don't want to tell you anything here. I would, again, ask you to submit that question in writing over to Tawana, and we will come back with a very detailed response to give you the right direction. So I'm. And so what I would tell you though, most contracts that we review, there are always purchase option contracts, right? There's always a lot of contingencies involved that include if you do not reach environmental clearance, or if you don't get your funding, or whatever else that basically you're not on the hook to execute the contract. So what I would again, so we will come back with very specific guidance on that particular front. If you're going to be spending a lot of money to go buy a piece of dirt, we want to be able to give you the right guidance. So I would be prepared to tell you anything in detail right now. And if you submit it in writing, we'll work our best to get you a timely response, because I know things are moving fast. Crystal. All right. Everyone's very patient. We're going on 2 hours here, and I appreciate your time. But I want to have an opportunity if there's any other questions, because again, after this, they have to go in writing. Yes, sir. Small, yeah. So, Yeah, real quick. If you want to disperse, that's fine. We'd ask you just go ahead and go in the hall, but I think there's still some people asking questions. So, hello in the back. Hello in the back. Hi. Yeah. If you can leave. We're not forcing you to stay. You feel free to go, but we asked you to step out so we can answer questions. Yes, the small rental program. We're still waiting on our guidelines to be approved by the GLO. We have a NOFA in development. We hope to get it rolled out here within this, say, 6 to 8 weeks time frame, and we continue to push on that because we have a high need to get that program up and rolling. So, okay. Any other questions? Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, do you mean you mean in the next like a small rental program? Oh, okay. I will say the programs are very different, meaning that this program's primarily for 8 units and more. Other ones 7 units and less. So you're right in the sweet spot there. Then, but it would not preclude you from applying in the small rentals. Totally separate program, different criteria. So we have a 2 application limit there as well. So if you submit 2 in this round and then 2 in the small rental, that would be permissible. Not for the same deal. So that's double dipping in 2 different programs. So, yes, Bobkin. You lost me half. Okay. Sorry, I must have. All right, I'll hit with you that question here. Is there any other direct questions? Let me. All right, I tell you what, and I'll have my procurement person here and make sure I'm not violating anything. If there isn't anything else that could be asked on a, I guess, non-deal related basis, I think we'll pretty much wrap this up and we'll stick around for any other ad hoc questions. Sound good? All right, thank you. Thanks, everybody.